Welcome to Between Showings, a podcast where two sisters in real estate sit down with people behind the homes, businesses, stories shaping our communities, from real estate and entrepreneurship to design, lifestyle, everything in between. These are the conversations happening between showings. I am so excited to welcome a friend, another realtor in the industry, Tyler Vandermolen, today to the podcast. He has really taken off in his career and done a lot of really amazing things. And I really want to focus on, real estate investing with him today and house flipping. He has a lot of experience in that field. So thanks so much for joining me.
Yeah, thanks for inviting me onto the show. It's a blessing anytime I can share what I know with other people that are looking to learn and grow in the business. So I'm very fortunate to have the opportunity.
How did you get into real estate to begin with?
Yeah, so when I got into real estate was like 2021 is when I hung my license for the first time. And I had always had a passion for it when I was younger. I would watch HGTV and a lot of the home renovation shows that are out there on the television. That's what I preferred over like Barney and all the kids shows. So for a long time as a child, that's my parents kind of knew that's what I wanted to do. Later in life, I got into that after doing a bunch of different sales jobs, determining that I like relationship sales the most. And I think I didn't struggle. I was still a top performer in more of the head-on sales, but I prefer the style of making relationships with others. So that's kind of what drew me to the business.
I love that kind of a mix of passion and what you're good at. And that's all you can ask for in a career someday. So
Right.
did you always know you were going to kind of go into the avenue of investing, flipping, rentals, things like that?
Yeah, ultimately, that's where the deepest root of my passion was. I knew that I had to get into the game, which for a lot of people starts with brokering real estate. You need to understand how the transaction corresponds. You need to understand the relationship building part of the business and learn the forms, learn all of the compliance, and just how the real estate market is. I think that background really helped me propel into being a better investor because I saw the process through of guiding somebody from point A to point Z in a real estate transaction. So once I got the hang of that, not only could I propel my business as a broker and start to broker more homes for other people, which I've always been very listing heavy, it allowed me to just understand the business better, form better connections, and then start to work my way into investing.
That makes sense. And so much to learn. I know, we've met before, and one thing that always stuck with me that you said is just the mentors you've had yourself
Right.
personally in the industry have made such a big difference.
Yeah, I'm incredibly fortunate to have a lot of great mentors to look up to. Some that I have a deeper personal relationship with. One in specific, I've bought many deals from. I've done deals with them. I've flipped with him, learned a lot of things from him. He's always been a constructive teacher. He wants to teach me and to like help me when I'm struggling and this is what you should do instead. And I learned a lot of my foundation from that individual. And then I've also been fortunate to connect with and meet other mentors that are larger fish in the pond. They've got more rentals than I do by far. They've got 20 to 30 more years in the business than I have. So fortunately, I've been able to make relationships with people like that. We don't talk every single day, but if I call them on the phone and they're available, they'll take my call. They always have great advice. So I think that factor alone is really a huge contributor to a lot of the success that I've had. Just the access to information and experience and just the mega mind energy that I have from these other people that have done it for many years longer than I has allowed me to soak up that knowledge a lot quicker.
Were you nervous going into your first deal personally that you were going to invest in?
Absolutely. And I tell everybody that's getting into the business that that first deal is it's paving your highway. Once you the first time you get your license and you're driving around in the neighborhoods, it's a little different than when you get on the freeway. That first time's a little scary. You get on the freeway and you're like, wow, this is what it feels like to drive 70, 80 miles an hour. And that's kind of how it felt. I looked at probably 20 different duplexes. My dad would take off at lunch sometimes. We'd go look at a couple in between, his lunch break and stuff like that. And a lot of the areas I was looking in, they weren't necessarily the greatest areas. I was just trying to get into the first one, and I had this misconception that cheaper was better, but sometimes cheaper is actually more expensive for a variety of different reasons. So I based the beginning of my investing career off of high appreciating areas. The first area I ever invested in was Wauwatosa. So that was in 2023, and it's a little different now. It's getting harder and harder as the years go by in this current market to invest in those high appreciating areas as those prices keep coming up and the interest rates are high. It's very difficult for those numbers to make sense. However, I do encourage a new investor to start in an area that makes you comfortable, where you can find tenants that are in a similar, maybe a similar place in life to you, so it makes the experience more comfortable, like a young professional if you're younger, or if you're more middle aged, maybe, the same as where you are in life, because it just makes it easier to get your foot in the door. So my first property was from a mentor, like I was talking about. He was trading into a new home in Lake Country. They were selling their house in Brookfield, and then he wanted to sell one property just to have some more cash so that he could renovate that house in Pewaukee. So fortunately, he kind of saw me looking at all these places, and he took me under his wing, and he said, I've got a place for you. It's in Wauwatosa. This is a great way for you to get started. You should buy this deal. And then from here and on, I can kind of help guide you through this process. So that's how I got started. And actually, I didn't have an inspection on that first property. That was part of the deal that we worked out. I got a really good price. It actually appraised for $50,000 over what I was paying for it. So really great deal. Didn't do an inspection. I did one for informational purposes, just because it was a scary kind of conception, feeling, thought to not have an inspection. But just the fact that I knew the person I was buying from, it really took away a lot of the initial fears and broke that ground that allowed me to get into the business.
When you say sometimes not the cheapest property is the best investment, what
Right.
are some things you mean by that?
Yeah. So oftentimes, if the price seems too good to be true, the price is low, a property's been sitting, it's going to be an expensive property to repair, because it's not going to fit everybody's buy box. It might not be the right property for the average buyer who doesn't have a cash reserve built up, doesn't have other cash flowing assets, or necessarily an income producing machine, where they're looking for properties that they want to pick up and renovate and force the appreciation. A lot of first time investors are looking for more of a ready place where they can do some light cosmetic improvements, like painting and maybe throwing on some hardware on cabinets, or paying some contractors to do some of those more middle of the road updates, like windows and throwing countertops in and stuff like that. You might not be ready to buy a property that needs a roof, siding, everything in between. So that, what I mean by that is, like, if the price is really low, it may be in an area that you may not want to live in yourself. It may be a harder to manage type tenant area, or it may need a lot of work. So I would always recommend finding a high appreciating market where it's easy to rent. It's a great way to start. And then the best way to get started is to own or occupy a property, put a lot less money down, leverage the bank's money, and then get into the door and go from there, because everything gets simpler once you get into the business.
Totally. When you look at a place and you're trying to determine, is the juice worth the squeeze, quite frankly, is what I have to do to this place worth what I'm going to get out of it? How do you kind of determine cost of renovations, things like that?
That process became so much simpler as I got more and more experience in the business and did more and more management of rehabs. At the beginning, I used to rehab my properties mostly 100% myself, with the exception of certain skilled trades that I did not know, like electrical work, plumbing, things like that, where those need to be done properly, correct. They're going to be expensive to repair if you do it wrong, safety hazards, the whole nine yards. So To answer that question, I believe that as you get more into the business and you start to buy more properties, you'll learn there's a better use of your time, and that's finding more opportunity. And finding the opportunity is really what drives the vehicle of how to scale and how to become more successful and to grow a larger portfolio. So at that point, you build your connections and you start to farm out those repairs to contractors, people that are better suited for that work for you, and you find out very quickly that that work gets done quicker, it gets done better, and then it allows you to move a little bit faster. So you just have to compensate for the cost of these things.
Yeah.
So to further elaborate on how you scope out what it costs, I can walk into a house now and I can kind of just see it. I can see the walls, I can see the cost of everything just right off the top of my head. I do think a really good tool that I have underutilized would be AI. I think you should, if you're a younger investor or even an established investor, you should be using AI as much as possible. You can literally take a list of, you can write down a list when you walk a property of all the things you want to do. And you can say, hey, in this local market, what should I expect these repairs to cost? And that can really give you a good start. But I always recommended when you walk through these buildings, take great notes, take pictures, walk through videos, and then really document all the things you want to do. And then just go shop those around, find out what they cost. And realistically, even if you're competing with something on market, you do a little bit of that research. It might take you a day or a half of a day. Within a day, you should be able to know, hey, this is exactly what my costs are going to look like. Does this deal pencil out or not?
Yeah. What do you think are some of the biggest, I guess, quote unquote, mistakes that someone who wants to get into kind of this business model when they go into a property and maybe they want to do changes that aren't really going to be worthwhile or not going to give any ROI?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think every investor goes down this path at the beginning. It's more emotional when you start because it feels more like a home. The really good operators, as far as investors go, they forget that part. They operate like a business. And I've always encouraged people to operate like a business, but also treat treat it as a people business because it is. Without your tenants, you're nothing. You can't pay your mortgages. So you need that balance with your tenants where you're providing an incentive for them to enjoy staying in your property so they can stay longer, and the longer they stay, the less vacancy you'll have, and so on. So I think, to circle back to your question with that, the way that I would look at it, I think the early mistakes I made is I did a bunch of things that I would have, done if I bought a single family home and it's really truly my home. But what I didn't realize is, like, I'm going to be here for a certain amount of time and I'm just going to move on to the next deal. So I can't treat this like it's a forever thing. So I think the most investors would agree paint is your best rehab tool. It's the cheapest way to make a big impact, to really clean up a space. Every single time I see a totally trashed out or messed up house, the first thing I think about is, like, how can I paint this thing to make it look better? So painting is your cheapest, most effective, highest ROI update. And then I would put the money into the kitchen, into the bathroom. That's where you're going to see the biggest swings and value increases. And that is similar to a single family home now, where that's what most realtors would tell you. If you want to get your home ready to sell, where should I put my money? It's going to be in things like that, or possibly lingering big repairs that are going to stop a sale from happening, like a bad roof or a failing AC or something like that. So the mistake that people make is they over improve. I'm not saying you shouldn't plant flowers and fix up the grass. And I actually, because I own a landscaping company, I can do a lot of those things in house for a better cost. So I do actually treat my lawns with fertilizer and weed control and clean up the landscaping and do mulch every year, but I'm getting it at such a better cost. I would say if you don't have a situation like that, you have to evaluate if that really makes sense for you. So just don't over improve and don't put money into the wrong things. Make sure the upgrades you're doing are appealing to everyone. Don't paint your cabinets pink as much as that would be fun. Make sure that you're appealing to the crowd.
Totally. Is there any deal that sticks out in your mind where you're like, this was a huge learning lesson for me. I shouldn't have invested in this property, or it just unraveled into a lot more than you expected. Or what'd you learn from it?
I think that lesson came further down the line. So if I could break down my investing career over the past about 3 years now, I guess, a little over 3 years. The first year, I started very small. Like I said, I renovated everything mostly myself with my dad, and I used the traditional path of putting 25% down or 20% down or a large down payment down, and then I would have to come in with my own cash and spend even more money to fix these properties up. So for instance, that first property I bought was for 240,000. It appraised for 290, but that equity was trapped. There's nothing I could do with that money because it was trapped inside of that home. So I put $60,000 down, and then I reached into my pocket for another several, probably five, six, 7,000 to improve the property. That's the old school way of growing a portfolio. In my personal opinion, it is unrealistic in today's market condition with interest rates and prices to grow a portfolio that way. It just would take too long. How many people can do more than one of those a year? Not
Yeah,
many, not
no,
many. So it started slow. Then I discovered creative finance, which I've spoken on actually in a few other podcasts. I think with Real Broker, I spoke about that once. And creative finance really paved the path of growth, exponential growth. So creative finance allowed me to get into deals with less money out of my pocket so I could use my money on improving the properties and then to capture that back in the process of refinance. So that's how you grow and scale a portfolio, because now you're leveraging more of other people's money. You're
mm-hmm.
using private investors' money. You're not even using your cash in many examples. So that allows you to really control your costs. So one of my biggest lessons came really actually wasn't those beginning ones, because that was pretty harmless.
Yeah,
Doing the over improvement, those are kind of small, minor things that improved over time. But what really hurts you is if you buy the wrong deals. Because once you learn how to use that creative finance process, it becomes, I don't want to say it's easy, but it becomes very formulated of how you continue to just buy and buy and buy more deals. And what that caused me to do was actually overbuy in some circumstances. I've always believed that the world's very abundant. There's infinite opportunities out there. That's why I'm so willing to share what I know, because I know there's not enough time in the day nor enough ability for me to buy every deal that's out there. I'd love to
right.
watch somebody else buy some of the deals I can't buy, because it'll
Yeah,
improve their life and it'll further the real estate community. But what I learned is like I said, it becomes almost easy in a sense to just keep buying and buying and buying once you learn that system and you understand the metric of what percentage to of the after repair value that you can buy these properties at and get the private funding. Where I would like overbuy, and then I would be like to the point where I was running out of money for all these repairs, and I was banking on this to close or that to close in order to finish this other property. So I feel like that process, everybody has to go through that as you're scaling, because you need to learn what not to do. And you
yeah,
need to learn that at some point you should just take a deal. Hey, maybe you find a deal, an XYZ investor over here is looking for a deal, and you sell that deal off to them, make a quick $5,000-$10,000, and just
mm-hmm.
move on with what you're currently doing. That's probably a better decision in that instance, rather than taking another thing on that's going to sit there, accrue
Yeah,
interest, and then you're going to be in this constant stress of like, where's the money going to come from? So
right.
I did that a few times where I was like right at the edge. You're brokering a ton of real estate. I've got a business. There's a great income, a healthy income coming in, but I felt like I was literally broke. And that was
Mm-hmm.
probably one of the worst feelings ever, and stresses and pressures, to where it taught me that, okay, I'm going to pass on this deal. It's not quite good enough. Maybe this guy wants this deal. Maybe I can help him or
Mm-hmm.
her get into this property instead. And I'm just going to focus on what I have. And once I feel like I'm stabilized with what I have, then I'll buy more deals again.
That makes sense. And we touched a little bit about the market right now and how that initial way you were doing things isn't really working anymore. When you think about it's very much a seller's market still, is that changing the way you're approaching things? Is it hard for someone right now who wants to start to get into it because of market conditions?
Yeah, I think it's difficult to get in if your only source of leads is just off of the MLS. I do
Hmm.
think there are great opportunities on the MLS because probably three or four of my deals were off of the MLS.
Hmm.
Some of them I negotiated down. It all has to do with timing. One of my best deals ever was on MLS. It was a three family in Wauwatosa. It was listed right before this past election,
Yeah.
presidential election. So the world was under turmoil. People didn't know what was going to happen. The world was a little uneasy. I think the economy was a little, people were questioning it, but my
Hmm.
focus was real estate. I listened to what was going on in the world. I cared about it, but I kept my focus on what mattered to me. And I
Yeah.
saw an opportunity and I saw a property that people were overlooking
Yeah.
because it just doesn't, it's not a very common opportunity. You don't see three families or four families in Wauwatosa,
Hmm.
specifically that micro market, go for sale very often. So I told myself as soon as I saw that I have to get that property, no matter what. What helped me with that deal was the third story was gross. It was just absolutely gross. The shower was full of mold. There were birds' nests in the windows. The guy was smoking in there, so like you could see like kind of the smog all over the
Yeah.
walls. It was disgusting, and people would tour this property and they would get to that and they would turn around and they would leave. And going back to that past question about mistakes, I actually passed up a really good opportunity that my mentor bought. We were both kind of looking at it at the same time. I walked into it. This was a lot earlier in my career, and it
Yeah.
was gross. I walked in and I turned right back around because I'm a very like cleanly, like neat person. And I got in there and I got a weird feeling and I'm like, I'm out of here. And I
Yeah.
left. And he came the same day and he's like, what did you think about that property? And I was like, that thing's gross. I don't want it. He bought the property and later went on like a year later to sell it for a huge gain. And he didn't really do all that much. So I had that lesson in the back of my head when I
Hmm.
was walking this property. So actually, what I did is I wrote on it. I asked for my commission. My commission was around $9,000. And within that $9,000, I was able to fix up that gross unit. So
Hmm.
my commission paid for the repairs of that. And then the other units, I didn't do anything to. I raised the rents. I was successfully able to raise the rents 50
Oh,
on the
wow.
first and second floor because they were vastly under market. And I think that's another reason it wasn't selling. But I
Hmm.
saw my communication ability and my talent with people as an opportunity to come in and to level with these people and say, hey, look, this is a business. I respect your home. I want you to stay here. I'm happy to do updates, but this is where I have to be for rent. And that
Yeah.
conversation, to my surprise, or to maybe other people's surprise, went very well. They didn't have any argument to it. They said, well, we knew this was coming. So
Yeah.
all those people walked past that opportunity because it was gross, because the rents were low. And
Hmm.
they missed out the fact that there was an ability there to make that asset become what it is now. Now that property is probably worth over a probably over 100,000 more than what I paid for it with the repairs I did. And then it also is my largest cash flowing property. And that was bought off of the MLS. So every once in a while, there's a diamond in the rough. Timing's
Hmm.
perfect. You get a great deal. But your best deals are going to be off market direct to seller. Your second best deals are going to be off market from a wholesaler or another investor, like I said, that doesn't have time for a specific project. So, in that circumstance,
My follow-up question from that is kind of two-part. There's a certain amount of time that you have to own a property if you're updating it before you sell it. Is that correct?
that's a good thought to cover. So, there's not a certain amount of time that you have to, but I would be careful about trying to sell a property too soon because you hold real estate long enough. When you're flipping a property, you can add value and you're forcing appreciation rapidly. So that's a lot
Hmm.
different. You're able to have a property for only a couple months, still make a profit. But if you're going to buy a rental property and you're just going to fix it up a little bit and then you decide to sell it in a year, you better have a great reason of why you're selling it. Really, I would say the only reason is to trade into a better property, because
Sure.
that's going to be expensive to sell. You've got to pay, most of your costs are on that selling side
Yeah.
after you pay all the agents involved and the title company and the taxes and fees. You might lose money if you sell a
Mhm.
property too quick.
Yeah, that makes sense. And when it comes to like your rental properties, I mean, I assume you're not like cash flowing immediately. What does
Correct.
that kind of time frame process look like? Does that happen once you own a few?
Great question. Real estate is a very slow moving machine. It's like a train, a huge train getting started. It takes a long time for that train to really gain speed. But once it does, there's no stopping it. That's my best analogy for it. When you get started, your cash flow is going to be next to none. Most
Hmm.
deals that you buy, whether it's off market's a little better, but even on market, um, you might be closer to break even if you really know the numbers. A lot of people
Hmm.
don't really know all the numbers that go into it, but it's much more than just your principal and interest payment. It's
Yeah.
also your taxes, it's your insurance, it's all the repairs, it's maintenance, it's vacancy. A lot of people don't calculate for vacancy over the years. You could go 3 years with no vacancy, and then you could have 4 months in a row where that property's sitting. And that's expensive because if your rent's $2,000, that's just adding up pretty
Yeah.
fast. So the best operators are calculating for that in their calculations of how that property is producing. We're also calculating for large repairs over the grand scheme of the ownership of that property. So that would entail putting a new roof on, new furnace, new AC, all new windows, big ticket expenses. So
Hmm.
you're going to start out with a very low cash flow, but maybe if it's $300 on this property, then you get a second one. Now you're at 600. Get a third,
Hmm.
maybe you're at 1,000. Typically, I would say for every 10 properties, you're not looking at a great return these days. I think on like 40 or 50 units, you're probably looking at $7,000 to $8,000 a month in true cash flow with the real numbers. So you can
Hmm.
divide that out up or down, multiply it, make it relevant to what you have right now. But I would say
Yeah.
that's a very accurate metric.
So I think a lot of times people have the misconception that they want to just like, oh, I'll just dabble in this. I'm just going to buy
Right.
one rental property and rent it out, where it might not be in their best interest to do something like that.
It may not. It really depends on what your lifestyle is and what you're looking to get out of it. I would say if you're in the corporate world, you have a nice job, and you have the ability to buy some real estate over the course of your career, it's going to act as a second retirement fund for you. I would call it more of a pension because it's going to pay you over and over and over. It's very predictable what it's going to pay you. You have your Roth IRA and your other investments and your life insurance and all that, but it's a very great benefit even to the average corporate person or a realtor or whatever profession you're in. I always recommend that you buy and hold some real estate. It's just a great addition to your retirement and your investments in life. However, if you have a couple properties, don't expect it to change your life.
Yeah.
Keep doing what you're doing. Just manage those and suffer through the pain and thank me later in 30 years. If you want to operate this business as a way to retire, you have to buckle in and strap up for the big fight, because it's going to take you probably 10 years to really feel like your life has changed.
Hmm.
I feel today in 3 years, although my acceleration and growth and scaling has been incredibly quick for somebody who's only been in the business for 3 to 4 years, I
Hmm.
still feel, I know that things have changed, but I won't allow myself to feel like that.
Yeah.
We really haven't changed that much. It's not life changing income to the point where I could quit everything else I do, but
Hmm.
I do see the path of what I need to do to get to that point. And that becomes more clear and clearer as time goes by.
Yeah, that's amazing. Let's do a fun little lightning round of
Okay.
questions. You can say yes, no, or you can elaborate if you want. But
Sure.
first one is a flip or a rental?
What is the question? Like, what would I prefer?
Yeah, which would you choose?
Um, I would say flipping is a difficult process. There's certain personality types and people that really love flipping and that's all they do. It's an incredible way to generate capital very quickly, but it's also incredibly risky and stressful. It's
Hmm.
difficult to manage all of the contractors that are involved, and there's always problems you didn't expect. And then on the back end, it's always that feeling of, was I correct about the numbers? Is it going to
Yeah.
sell for what I think? So I'm always a rental guy. That's what makes me happier. I can control my costs a lot better. And I really believe it's just such a process that once you understand that process, it's incredibly simple to just repeat, rinse, and repeat. So I've always been a rental guy over flip, but I will admit that flipping is a better way to generate capital and cash flow.
Nice. If you would you prefer to put a little sweat equity into a property or have something that's more turnkey?
Yeah, at this point in my career, all I'm really looking for is sweat equity because that's how I can scale with less and less of my own capital. As I said before, the best way to get started, find something that is a little bit more turnkey, try to
Mhm.
negotiate a good deal on it, and just get your feet in the door with something that's comfortable.
If someone only had money to fix up a kitchen or a bathroom, which should they choose?
I would probably go with the kitchen on that. It's just that impression that it makes, and it's the most visible space in a home. It's where people congregate. So I think your biggest bang for the buck would be there, but the bathroom's a close number two.
Do you have a favorite tool or app you use currently in your business?
Great question. There's a very simple tool that I'd recommend for all investors, new or old. Um, it's a little tool that allows you to analyze the deal. You can put in the taxes, the insurance, the purchase price. There's different names for different ones. The one I use is Ballpark Deal, but there's some more in-depth ones out there. But I think that one's super easy to use and fun to use.
Cool. Do you think there's like a really big investment myth out there that people believe?
The biggest investment myth is that you're going to get rich today doing it. You're not. It's going to be a suffering process. Some days you want to sell them all. Some days you want to buy them all. Really depends on where the energy's shifting at the moment and what problems you've gotten yourself into. But overall, it's not a get rich quick scheme like people kind of make it seem to be on social media. It is a very difficult, intense operating business that requires a lot of your time. So to elaborate off of that, it's also not passive income. That's the
Yeah.
biggest lie and myth that I see published is that, oh, buy real estate, it's passive income.
Mhm.
Not true at all. It's very active, it's very incorporated.
Do you have like a dream investment property, your ideal scenario, place, all the things?
Yeah, I do. There's a couple different things, like one dream and something I'd like to get into later in life. And I think this would be on the back end of my career when I'm really just having fun with the business, just trying to enjoy myself. Because at that point, I'll have put my time in. Is I'd love to go down to a coastal city and maybe kind of bounce around to coastal cities and buy up some of the mom and pop motels and older hotels that you see that have really good property, whether it's beachfront or across the street from the ocean. And they've been operating under the same family for decades or even generations, and they're coming to their end. The future of that family doesn't want to operate it anymore. They're not interested. They want to do other things. And just in general, those properties aren't being operated to their true potential. So I have this fantasy or this dream of kind of bouncing around the coast, fixing those up, and bringing those up to where they should be. That's one thought I have. Another one would be owning like a 6 unit or an 8 family right on the main drag of North Avenue in Wauwatosa. Those properties almost never trade. If they do, it's from one investor to the other, kind of a back pocket sort of a deal. At this point, the numbers don't even really make sense with how they what they sell for. And to elaborate off of that, probably another example would be like something on the east side and the North Shore. Same concept. Incredibly beautiful real estate in a great area, but just doesn't really make much sense. So it would be more of like a fantasy or later in life just to say that I was able to do it.
Yeah, very cool. Great locations.
Right.
Um, Do you do you have like a market prediction over the next 5 years, whether it's just real estate market in general or investing specifically?
I do actually. I have some strong feelings that I think with all of the inflation and the way the economy's been, I think even stemming from basically right around COVID, all of this extreme appreciation, a lot of these mentors I've spoken about, the ones that have been in the business, are telling me this isn't going to last forever. This isn't going to last forever. All you've ever known is rapid appreciation. You will see the other side of that when it gets tough and nasty. And I think we're trending towards later in the 2020s. I think the 2030s could be really difficult for a lot of people in general. I think a lot of that inflationary spending and the way the economy is shaped up is going to catch up to us at some point. I think we're kind of hiding how bad it could be by just continuing on and just printing more money and inflating more things. But eventually that tipping point is going to have to give, and we're going to see what comes out of the other side of that.
I have to imagine that houses can't keep appreciating 30% every
You
year.
can't.
People will not be able to afford anything.
Exactly. It's totally unaffordable. I do think it's a little bit divisive and it's being pushed in that direction because a lot of money is created in lending and borrowing and in real estate, whether it's small residential, mostly the big money is in that big multifamily. But I think at some point it'll just get so unaffordable that it
Yeah,
will have to change.
yeah, I completely agree. My last question for you, if someone listening wants to start building wealth through real estate but feels sort of intimidated by the whole process, what would be the very first step that you would encourage them to take?
Don't be intimidated by the process. Seek advice and knowledge from people like myself and other investors and really soak up the knowledge like a sponge. But the biggest course is taking action. Without action, it's all just thoughts, it's all just ideas in your head. You have to get into the business. Trust me, that first step is nerve wracking. You don't have to take this business to the highest level where in a few years you're buying multiple properties a year and you're flipping and you're wholesaling and all that comes with that. You don't have to ever get to that period of your career if you don't want to. Like I said, I really encourage everybody to have a little bit of real estate a part of their investment opportunity for retirement. But I think it's really important to not be afraid to just jump in and learn. You're going to make a ton of mistakes. Don't be afraid to make mistakes, learn from them, and then just continue to have a good work ethic and, self reliance and to learn from other people. Just keep doing your best and it will work out for you.
Love that. Well, if people want to follow your journey and all you're doing in real estate, not only on the investing and flipping side, but you're also just a realtor too, where can they
Right.
follow you?
Yeah, you can connect with me on Instagram and Facebook. I do the majority of my writing on Facebook. That's the platform I've decided is more appropriate for some of the writing that I do. I do enjoy writing and kind of elaborating and stuff like that. So if you want to read about what my thoughts are or how things are going or what I'm seeing, that's probably the best place to find me. The username is just Tyler Vandermolen. And then I believe the username is the same, Tyler P. Vandermolen, for Instagram. On there, I usually repost a lot of real estate content that I consume and watch or trust. And then I also post when I'm listing and when I'm selling and buying and stuff like that. So those are good resources to connect with me. Otherwise, you can connect with me personally if you're looking for advice. You can always give me a phone call or reach out. I'm always happy to help people, mentor, and just get you off on the right foot.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining me today.
Absolutely. I had a great time. Thank you for considering me to be on the podcast and looking forward to sharing what I know and maybe consuming some of what the other people you interview have to say as well. Thank you.
Thanks for hanging out with us between showings. If you love this episode, make sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with someone who would enjoy the conversation. And we'll see you next time between showings.